Hello, my name is Chris, and I wanted to do a little explanation and theory about my floating shelf project. Um, I've never done a video before, so bear with me. Floating shelves seem to be a pretty popular item recently. I've installed a handful and helped on some installs. I have used some generic brackets, and I've worked with some custom brackets. Most of the generic brackets I did not feel were really a quality item. They work, but if you're displaying or carrying more than decorations, say, I don't really feel they're adequate. Um, I've seen some custom brackets that were pretty cool. A bracket that had a welded flat piece or with rods welded to the flat and then lagged into the studs on the wall, and that was pretty cool. But the only thing I noticed on that one was when the installer was lagging it into the studs, because the wall was wavy, I watched all those rods just move up and down and left and right, and I had to spend a lot of time shimming to try to get them to straight to line up back with the holes in the back of the shelf. So when I was helping on that, I asked another installer that was there, there's got to be a better way, and he mentioned all thread and just drill it right into the stud and have it sticking out, which is sort of the theory that I'm following here. But a conversation with another friend brought about a real good point of using all thread, which is a great product, but if you're not using the thread, why would you use threaded rod? So in this instance, I'm choosing to use pipe because my diameter overall that's carrying the weight and the stiffness will be larger, and therefore I believe to be stiffer. Because with all thread, if your effective diameter for the support is the shallowest spot for the thread, which throughout the size range gets considerably smaller, and the material just does not seem all that stiff. So I chose pipe. This is schedule 43/8 ID, and the only kind of troubled spot I've found with the pipe is that the OD doesn't reach a nominal size necessarily like the threaded rod does. But this 3/8 ID winds up with an OD about 11/16. So I found at the local hardware store an auger bit. I'm not sure if that's the most appropriate bit to use, but I got it, and I'm going to see if I can make it work. I did some bench tests, and I think it will work. As far as actually honing out the hole in the wall and the shelf, I decided to try one of these drill jigs. That way when I'm drilling, I can try to get as straight and level as a hole as possible. These things are, I don't know, kind of weird, kind of cool, kind of picky, but I think it'll be better than freehanding. And as you can see, I've kind of adapted a jig to use here, because one thing I felt after watching that custom install and watching the rods move all over is the wall is probably not going to be dead flat. So I made another real simple jig that looks like this, that's fairly flat on the back surface here, and then I think what I'll do is just put a screw and put it into the lower part of the stud just to hold it there. And then my drill guide can run along it. And if the wall does get wavy or something, I can kind of shim it to keep it good and straight. That way my jig doesn't kind of move around with the wall. And then what I can do is mark my studs on the top of the jig here, drill into the wall, and then I can take this same piece and just flip it and put it on directly on the back side of my shelf. So hopefully I'm getting the exact same hole that I'm putting in the wall into the shelf. This is my shelf here. This is the long piece, and then I do have a short piece because I have a corner. So I'll have the short piece, I'll put that in first, and then the long piece will butt into the short piece. And hopefully we'll see that on the install. So that's kind of the route I've chosen, and we'll see how it goes. So this is my space, and what's going to happen is the short section will go this way along the corner back there, and then the long section will butt and be along the length of this wall. And it will actually be a floating shelf, and I'll put my desk underneath it. So it'll probably hold monitors and some other stuff like that. So we'll see how this works, but my wall isn't really too bad. It's a little gappy here and there, but as I get out here, it's fairly flat. Alright, so one thing I didn't really explain on the first portion of the video was actually making the holes for the rod. My plan was with the drill jig, I've got a longer 3/16 bit in here. And I chose that because the auger bit has the self-propelling auger on the front of it, and I found with my bench tests that with the small bit, my pilot hole would guide the auger, and it seemed to work okay. Bigger holes, it wouldn't do anything. So my hope is going through the stud that pilot hole at 3/16 guides the direction of the auger bit. The only problem in this wall, because this is an old house, and I know from remodeling the kitchen next door where I shot the other video, is almost this entire home has siding on the inside of the house. So it makes it really hard to find studs, if there is any, honestly. And I'm almost thinking between the window and the corner here, there is no stud. I can't find one. I tried. So I went through that siding, and basically on this one, I had to go maybe a little bit farther to catch the back end of my pipe, farther than I'd like. I plan on going into the studs about 2.5 inches, and then I'll drill my holes in the shelf appropriately for the amount of depth I need to get flush to the wall. So in this instance, I'm winding up with quite a bit less than I'd like, just because I can't find a stud in here. Hopefully I didn't poke out the outside wall, just had to go into the sheeting on the exterior side to get some stability. So we'll drill the shelf now and see how it goes. Alright, I drilled the shelf, and so far so good. Got it in there pretty level, pretty much on my lines. I'm a little up this way, but I think that has more to do with trying to find the back of that exterior sheeting to grab a hook. So I'm not terribly worried about it. And the other thing I have going for me too is on my long shelf will butt in right about here. So what I did is I mortised in 3 dominoes right here, and then on the long shelf I basically mortised out a whole slot. So when I get this side fit to go in and out of its support rods, I'll put dominoes in here and glue it and slam it all together, and that should hopefully keep these surfaces pretty good and level. And as I was sort of expecting, you can kind of move them around, maybe hammer around the supports a little bit to kind of fudge it in, so to speak. So far so good. The only thing I learned, I'm not real used to these bits, but you really just want to let it rip, huh? Just hold it till you're lying and don't stop or hesitate, because it's hard to get them to move again afterward. Anyway, on to the long shelf. Alright, so I've drilled all the holes for the rods on the long portion of the shelf. The jig system worked pretty well, kind of as expected. All wound up pretty good. I only had one problem drilling into the backside of this guy, and just one of them drilled in at a pretty good angle. So when I went to slide all these on, it was one rod that was kind of holding it up. I actually trying to hog it out, poke through the bottom a little bit. That auger bit might not be the best thing to do that with, as it's always wanting to go forward. And I think that's exactly why I did that, because my rod should be ending about here. So at first I thought it was side to side, not perfect, but after a while I realized that this one dove. So it was the pinch point, basically. After I figured that out, I gave this a little bit of vertical compliance, hogged out the top of that a little bit, and now we're back on track. 4 supports over 60 inches. It's definitely quite a bit. Getting it all to line up was not necessarily easy, but it worked. There's a little deflection, as I feel you're going to get out of any floating shelf, but it's on there pretty solid, I'd have to say. I was initially thinking I might 5-minute epoxy those, but I'm going to pull it off, wipe off all the pencil marks, run a wire for my light, and see how we dry fit with the end piece once I get that in there. According to all my marks, it should line up pretty good. I'm pretty level. Really level, actually, that way. This way, I'm a little out. I'm a little high on this end, which if I were to have it one way or the other, I'd prefer it to be that way. Not too much, but one thing I did forget to do is I set the angle on the drill jig to go into the wall a little bit down, so the rods would stick up a little bit to anticipate load. And what I forgot to do was zero that out for these, so it might be part of it, but I'm not exactly sure. So that's the long shelf. I'm gonna clean it up and try to put it all together. All right, here we are. Completed shelf in place. dry fit. It went together pretty well. There is no glue or anything in there right now. It's really pretty solid, I'll be honest. I'm not sure how exactly to measure that, but I'm pretty happy with the rigidity of it. The only thing I don't like is that gap's a little bit big at the back there. I'm not sure exactly why. So I stuck a shim from the bottom to help tighten that up, so that's all that guy is. But it's in, it's together. I might pull it out and put PL glue or something on those rods and in the dominoes, but I'm not sure yet. It's seems to be sitting just fine. Okay, so I went looking around the house for something heavy, and I found a water jug is about all. So to kind of see how much the shelf deflects, I filled it up to about 6 gallons, and the shelf is still just in here. There's no glue, no epoxy, no anything. I think for now, I have pretty light use, maybe a couple computer monitors and officey things. So I think I'm just going to leave it for now. That way if I ever change, I don't have to rip stuff out and try to break apart construction adhesive. So here is 6 gallons of water, which is not light, on the center of the shelf. I don't really know exactly what that did, but I'll take a picture of before and after. And that's how it is. It's pretty sturdy. I'm happy. That's kind of what I was looking for. I think I wouldn't hesitate to load it up with kitchen plates and glasses and things like that. So that's what I got.